Welcome back. Having a Crack, episode 4. And this is our first episode with our first guest, Curtis Phillips. Already, we talked about this right before.
You can do it. I'll say it.
We're with, psychiatrist by the name of Curtis Phillips. Tonight is my first time meeting him. Caleb and him knew each other from the past. So Curtis, please tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background a little bit and how you and Caleb met.
So first of all, thanks for having me. I'm a psychiatrist here in Florida. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Been in the U.S. since 2009. Came here to finish up medical school. Then did my residency and fellowship and training, and so been here since then. And in terms of meeting Caleb, so I moved to Delray in 2020, and I was at a barber shop. So then the barber was telling me about owning property and trying to tell me about, just to be, more savvy in terms of investments and what to do. And
teaching you a little bit about real estate.
Yeah, just asking me, but, it was general conversation. And then in walks Caleb, and he was like, oh, look what the universe brought in. This guy.
Perfect person to walk in for that.
So then he's like, oh, he's a real estate agent. So then Caleb goes, oh, you're from Trinidad, and he has some Trinidad roots, and we pretty much hit it off since then.
Yeah, that's crazy, your Trinidad roots. I didn't know that until recently.
Yeah, for if anyone doesn't know, my dad's actually from Trinidad and Tobago. And I picked up on his accent, and I think I picked up on your accent because Kelvin didn't say it. And I picked up on his accent, and I was like, you from Trinidad? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, my dad's from Trinidad.
The only person I in college, a soccer player that I went to Bowling Green, he was from Trinidad and Tobago. How old are you?
36.
Oh, he's same age. Abiola Sandy. He played on the national team and stuff.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was really good. Good dude, good friend of mine. Yeah,
nice.
But that's my only connection to Trinidad.
Yeah, well, I'm the whole cousin, I suppose, but him. But after that we became friends then, and hung out a few times. And I was telling you I went to Trinidad Carnival.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, Snapchat. Yeah.
I went with him.
I had a few videos on Snapchat I see.
Yeah. So Caleb was saying that
that's who you went with?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Caleb did Trinidad Carnival, but he went to the south of the country, which is cool. Yeah. But I said, well, it's a little bit different in the north.
Yeah, when I did it in San Fernando in 2019, but I didn't do it properly. So I was like, I need to fucking do Trinidad Carnival properly. And Curtis was like, I'm going. I said, I'm there. And it was on my birthday, so I was like, I'm there. So I flew over.
Are we going next year? Is that like a yearly thing, or do you
have my flights booked?
I'll be there.
Oh, so I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there too.
Yeah.
Bro,
no, you won't.
Yes,
you will not be there. Yes. I put my money on for everybody watching right now. He will not be there.
Let's take bets online.
Absolutely. Yeah, just drop your comments and then we'll figure it out and we'll set some bets.
When is it? When is it?
February.
The Monday and Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, whenever that.
So it's February. I'm flying on the 13th. February 16th, I think, in the 7th.
Place your bets. I'm curious.
So I'll tell you a funny story, right? So I fly over to Trinidad to this guy. He's already there the Wednesday before I got there. And I'm like, flying over. I'm so excited and ready to fucking go. I'm like, who's picking me up? And he's like, don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. So I'm like, motherfucker, he's probably going to leave my ass there. So I text you right before we left. No reply. Get over there. Luckily, he put me in a group chat with one of the other boys. And as soon as I land, I try to call you. No reply. I'm like, this fucker. He was at a fete. This man was lit in the middle of a party. And
don't worry about it. Don't worry.
I'm sitting in Trinidad Airport like, where the fuck is this guy? Luckily, I had the number for one of the other guys, so his mom, Kevin, bro, they weren't even at the house. I would have been standing outside a random house. But luckily,
yeah. So my cousin was going to pick him up, but his flight came in like a little bit earlier. And then during Carnival, everyone takes forever to go through security. He gets through security in no time. So then
he was expecting him.
So then we were expecting him a bit later. So then I'm at a party. You can't get signal in the middle of 5,000 people. So
what's that big?
Bro.
So I didn't see the message. And then anyway, so he went over to my friend's house, he chilled there, and then my cousin is blowing me up like, I have people searching the airport for this guy. Where is he? And I'm like, yeah, he got impatient and left.
That's him. Yeah, that is him, bro. He just can't wait. He always talks about everybody else's way. It's Caleb or that.
Listen to me.
Everybody knows that.
Then there was a time I landed at. It was nearly 2 hours after before we got the first call. Hey, we're coming to the airport, picking you up now.
Anyway, a fun time was had back.
Anyway.
If anyone hasn't
Heaven
been
forbid
Trinidad,
you go and get a couple cheeseburgers and chill at the airport for a second. Like everybody else does.
Bro, I didn't know. No, I wasn't getting anyone to respond to me. Either way, if anyone has not been to Trinidad Carnival, you need to go.
I'm going. 100%. So anyways, let's, okay, so just to kind of give everybody a basis on like where we're going to lead into is he's a psychiatrist and he specializes, I don't know if it's specialized, so to speak, but primarily you deal with a lot of mental health.
Yeah, so I'm a psychiatrist, which is a mental health doctor, and then my specialty actually is addictions.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. This is going to be a good conversation. Because I had, my...
It's actually going to be a therapy session for Mike.
Not a therapy session at all. But in my world, it's a CTE is kind of a thing I like to talk about. So I don't know how much you know about that or familiar with it, or how that pries into. I think that definitely plays an issue with head trauma. With sports that are your head trauma over and over, like football, boxing, and so on. How that plays into the mental health world. You know what I mean? And kind of your knowledge on it, and well, I'm sure we'll figure out a bunch of conversations with all of that. So
yeah, so
no, I was going to say, what is CT or whatever you mentioned?
I'm doing an open up with it.
I don't honestly know what it is.
Let's not open up with the CT. I think we should segue into it. Let's it's kind of your background, how you got in, how did you get in to mental health? Was it intriguing, or how did you segue into that?
So, let's go back to secondary. Well, in Trinidad, Caribbean, in English, we call it secondary school, and in the US and Ireland, yeah. In the US, they call it high school. But in high school, I was like mental health stuff. So I did peer counseling. So in Trinidad, like in high school, you can do this like course where like you help other high school kids who have problems. You become a peer counselor.
You started off. That was your first thing, was in mental health.
Yeah, I think I was like 13 or 14.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then we did it. It was fun. And then I did the advanced peer counseling. And then I became the head of my school peer counseling group. So throughout most of secondary school, I kind of did that peer counseling thing and enjoyed it. And I thought it was pretty cool. And then that started it. Then
that's also, let them know, that's like the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
Because you're my age. I'm 36. So that's late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I just know what I want everybody to keep getting going.
Old fucks.
Carry on. It was a little tyke back then. No, the reason I say is because how it's evolved over time.
Right.
Because it went from scared to, not scared, but taboo a little bit, to going into that, talking about mental health, you were considered crazy, to now on the forefront of.
It was definitely taboo. It's still taboo now for a lot of places in the world, and even in the US to some degree. It's still taboo for a lot of different people. But yeah, back then I was in secondary school from 98 to 2003, 2005. So back then it was definitely taboo. But I liked it. And I enjoyed the human brain and learning about it and learning about people. And that always kind of tickled my fancy. So I was I want to get into it. But then I went to medical school. And growing up, I read a lot of books about surgery and surgeons, and I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I'm like, I'm going to medical school. I'm going to become a surgeon. But then I did psychiatry. I'm like, oh yeah, I like this. I forgot about this. I kind of like this. And I did surgery. I'm like, oh, I like this too. But I kind of felt like I was drawn more to psychiatry, and it suited my personality and my skill set and the way I deal with people and the way I think about things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do the psychiatry thing because I felt more at home in psychiatry than I did with surgery.
With your background, when you started off as a kid, early teenagers as a
right, and my interests. So I told my parents, and they were like, "But we sent you to medical school. How did you become a therapist? we thought you'd become a doctor. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're doctors too," and they're like,
It's like chiropractors. People don't consider chiropractors a real doctor.
They're in a medical.
It's all in the medical. It's all in the medical.
Right. There's different degrees of
it's not that kind of doctor.
But it's different degrees of respect, I say, that people in the medical field receive.
Yes, that's what we were talking about.
You know.
But thank you for the clarification of doctors. I didn't know that you were that brilliant in the medical world.
That's why you have me here.
No, that is not.
Carry on.
That is not why.
Caleb is a clarifier.
Is he though?
So that's basically how things
is this
work.
A can?
That is a can.
Thank you. That's why we have them.
That's called an aluminium. It's called an aluminium can.
Don't touch me.
It's called an aluminium can.
Don't touch me.
Do you call this aluminium or aluminum?
Aluminum.
Aluminium, yeah.
Yeah.
Aluminum.
Aluminium. Carry on.
See what I'm dealing with?
That's hilarious.
Okay, I mean, jeez.
So
aluminium.
Hold on. How do we say it, Janine? How is it said?
Aluminum.
Thank you. Oh my
aluminium.
goodness, this is ridiculous.
Aluminium.
Thank you.
Google it. Just Google it right now. It's aluminium.
We don't need to. It's part of the periodic table. We learned that as a kid. Aluminum.
Cool.
Okay.
So I find that interesting that when you were in school that you did the counselling, because when I was in school, in secondary school, we had counsellors as well who would be helping with kids that had the problems and stuff like that, and we weren't really able to be in the class helping people like that, but we always, like every week, I remember it was like a Wednesday, we would have someone come on or like come in and talk about mental health and stuff like that and depression, and we'd have people from the suicide awareness come in and talk about that, and it's like, so the whole time through school, we all, even though Ireland is so old school as well and had that stigma, it's like, the men never talked about their mental health issues, but there was a lot of it. But I think it was every Wednesday, we would have someone come in to talk about it. So people knew, but they were just afraid to speak up.
What year was this?
2010.
No, I went to college in 2011, so it would have been 10, 9, 8, 7.
Yeah,
good.
And you say Ireland.
That's powerful.
That is. Yeah. And you say Ireland, that old stigma. America was the same way.
Oh, it's still the same.
It is. But in America is too, to an extent. Like you said, it is still taboo. But with athletes coming out and saying it, I think that, to me, when I say on the forefront, Naomi, what's her last name?
Osaka?
Osaka, the Naomi, the wide receiver for the Falcons, just sat out the whole year. But he was saying that mental health issues and stuff. So when I say on the forefront, I mean, that never happened back in the day. When we were growing up, that never happened. You too, I guess. So we never talked about suicide. But when I played college football, there was no helmet to helmet back then. If you got hit, I remember getting rocked, standing up, and absolutely.
Head.
You come over, they would squirt some water in your face. I'm being dead serious.
No.
This is 2009 or 2008. This is 2008.
No.
I remember a football player of mine, Nate Waldron. It's weird that I remember this play, but I know why. We were playing at Boise State. It was a punt return, and he got smoked on like a crackback. And he went to get up, and you know, like when your hands, it's like in boxing when you see someone Uzi gets cracked. Mm-hmm. He was gone. You know what I mean? And I remember he didn't remember anything. The rest, and I had that happen where you don't remember. There was like a game we played the University of Tulsa in a bowl game. This was in 2007. And I can't tell you, and I'm one that can remember specific plays very, very well. That whole game, complete blur. I remember the first quarter, but you go second, third, and I remember watching the film, not remembering any of those plays happening. So I know that, and I don't remember, I can't tell you a specific hit or when it happened, because so there wasn't like an actual crack that where I was like, ooh, it was just something happened where I got hit right. And I can't remember. It was the craziest thing. That I do remember. So that's why, like, I mean, like, it's there, you know what I mean? But I can't see myself getting up there and being like, I got mental health issues. You know what I'm saying? That's just me, though.
But would you really, you wouldn't call that mental health issue? That was just from a hit. Like, when I was talking about in the school, is like, a lot of people did have mental health issues, and we did have the counselors. When I'm talking about what he did, what you're talking about is on a different subject. But
what I'm talking about is the buildup of hits and contact to the head. That hits mental health. That is CTE. I guarantee you, the football players that go crazy, the football players that are doing all. Antonio Browns, the guys that just all of a sudden start doing all this random off-the-wall shit. Yeah. Now, listen, again, like we were talking before this, I'm not giving them a crutch or an excuse. I'm just saying CTE is that thing. You can't even really, you can't diagnose it or look at it until they die. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not like they can come and start looking at people's brain and start. You can't see if someone has it. And what really got me about that was that kid from Temple was 24 years old that died, and they looked at his brain. This is a few years back. He had CTE.
I lived in Washington State. Go Cougars.
Never heard that one before. Wow, go Cougars.
Go Cougars.
You're a true fan. That's good. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I lived out there. I wasn't a true fan, but I lived out there. Yeah, and there, I forgot what year it was, 2018, 19. Their sophomore quarterback killed himself before the season started, end of the season. It wasn't during the season, but he killed himself, and I think they studied his brain. I think they said that he had CTE. There's been numerous high school kids who had suicided and they found out CTE, and I think there's a few studies, a few reports where people died from car accidents. Football players who study CTE, and so CTE is a field for neurology, psychiatry and neurology are under the same board. I'm not a CTE expert, but you see it, and I've heard about it and read about it enough to know a little bit about it. But once again, that's a neurological condition, encephalopathy. So I can't really speak on it as an expert.
Right. You know, I guess more so my reason for going into, have you talked to any ex-athletes that have mental health issues? No, when you say mental health, you're not talking like, I don't know the proper terminology I would say, like Down syndrome and stuff like that. You're talking developed mental health issues because of people's past, like history. Correct?
Yeah, I'm talking about just general mental health stuff. So we're looking at depression, anxiety, PTSD, social phobia, schizophrenia, dementia to some degrees, although that's more in neurology, but we see them a lot too.
So do you...
And then addiction, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And would you find...
but that all stems from, to me, addiction stems from a lot of past drama. It's how people fall into addiction. Correct?
Well, you have to do drugs.
Rather be
it could be just from a normal night out.
I was more so talking like alcoholism and stuff like that. I think if you do drugs, and I mean, a lot of people party and do drugs, but to make it an addiction, you have to have a serious issue, a deeper issue, I think, than it meets the surface. So I know a lot of people that party, they're not drug addicts, nor do they have mental health issues. You know what I mean? So I think, to me, it stems from something deeper, like a childhood trauma, or so be it. Yes, I'm sure some people just have addictive personality, but what is that addictive personality? What is that? You know what I mean? And I know you've heard that. Like, what is an addictive personality?
It's not a real thing.
Thank you. That's exactly. So,
Do you know how many girls say that to me?
Oh.
I have a very addictive personality.
I can't do that. I get addicted too
I
fast.
have an addictive personality. I would never do that.
But what I would say is that the notion that people need to have some sort of deep psychological trauma to get addiction is completely incorrect.
Explain, please. Elaborate.
So currently, the U.S. is going through an opioid epidemic. And I see a lot of patients. I have a lot of patients that are on Suboxone, which is a medication I use to treat addiction.
To come off of heroin, correct? Pills.
To come off of heroin and other opioids, whether it's OxyContin, or Percocet, whatever it is.
The legal heroin.
Right. So what you had happening is in the 90s, and there's various shows you could look on it. There's one with Michael Keaton on Hulu. It's pretty good. Dope Sick or Dope Nation, or something like that.
Janine, do you know the name of it?
It's pretty good. But anyways, the point is there
On Dope Nation?
it's with Michael Keaton on Hulu. It's pretty good actually.
It's a newer one, like a newer release?
The last few years, but it's pretty accurate on what's going on. But what you had was throughout the country of the U.S., a lot of people, middle class, upper class, lower class people who got injured for whatever reason, and they were put on opioids. And the opioid companies, the pharmaceutical companies, told doctors, hey, this is not addictive, it's not habit forming, don't worry about it, you need to treat your patient's pain. And they put a large number of people on it, and a lot of people who really didn't have any deep, dark trauma or psychological issues became addicted to it. And because they took an addictive drug and they got addicted to it. So if you are exposed to drugs and you take it enough, long enough, at high enough doses, you get tolerant and you eventually get addicted, and you have harmful consequences from it, serious impairments to your life. Do you have to have some like deep trauma or some like bad past? No, there's a lot of people who grew up in great families, have great jobs, and slipped and fell and hit, and then went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, take some OxyContin.
My mother is one of those. She got hurt at work.
Five years later, they were on 20. Now they're on 200. They can't work. They can't do anything, and their life is a bit ruined. And now they have an addiction. And now for the rest of their life, they are going to want and desire this drug. But they're not like, it's not a character defect. They were just exposed to it.
No, you're right. That makes so much sense and I can relate to my mother. I think I was 17. She got hurt at work, and I mean, this is 17, I'm 36, so 19 years. She's still jail, couple years, in and out, no, yeah, you're right, that makes sense. No, yeah. I agree with you 100% on that, because that's what you just explained with my mother to a T. Like a slip and fall, she slipped and hurt her back, started taking Oxycontins, next thing you know, she's selling them. Mm-hmm. To make a couple bucks to get them for free.
Some more, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not even to make money, just to get more and more and more and more. And shoot, and then it went to the black tar.
Yep.
You start getting those connections in the cities. Because I grew up in the country, you know what I mean? A town of 3,000 people, like, you knew everybody.
Right.
But again, when I grew up, it was pills. Like the early 2000s, that's that pill epidemic, like the real pill epidemic when Florida was pumping pills out left. I remember people coming down here to get pills and the doctors and stuff, and so, but you couldn't get the tar. You know what I mean? You couldn't shoot it up. So then it turned into internet came and people started getting access more and more to the city life, and
Right.
Yeah.
So, one of the things, we spoke about stigma with mental health. The stigma with addiction is, I would say, way worse. And part of what I would like to do is to have people kind of look at it like that so that they can come in for treatment. And then other people in the community and in their lives can look at people who are struggling with addiction and not be like, well, you're an addict. You're a bad person. You're an addict. You're choosing this life. You're an addict. You probably went through some horrible childhood and you're like a damaged person who now addicted.
But the reason I asked that, I've taken Oxycontin before. What's the difference? Because you said addicted personality is not a real thing.
Right.
And if it's not a trauma thing either that leads to it, so then what is it? The person just gives up and can't not quit? Even if they start peeling their skin off and going through all of that and wrecking a family, there has to be something deeper than just an addictive drug. Because I know a lot of people that take drugs that are addictive that aren't addicted.
Right. So I agree with you partially. So what I would say there is that, studies don't know this, all addiction psychiatrists know this. If you have untreated psychological issues, if you have depression, anxiety, PTSD, if you have untreated mental health problems, you are more predisposed to be addicted to drugs.
The heavier addicted, like the extreme addictions that you see.
I think the extreme addictions can happen to anyone.
Right.
But let's just take three of us in this room, and this is not an accurate but let's say I grew up with no parents, foster care, was abused, went through a bunch of stuff, and I do drugs. The chances are I'll probably, the chances are that higher likely than you two guys that I become addicted. Let's say Caleb had tough childhood, but he had a good grandmother or something. Somebody was there to help him out, and he played sports, and but he still had some trauma. His risk is going to be a little bit less than mine, but he'll still be at risk. Let's say you grew up in the burbs, perfect house, perfect family, great relationships, great support system, whatever. You do drugs, you are less likely than us to get addiction, but you still there's no way of knowing it.
But here's what I
so it's everyone is not the same. So everyone's risk is different.
Support system.
Everyone's risk is different.
Support system.
But
kind of what you just explained is support system.
Right.
It's all about the support system, which then again what I was saying earlier, it ties back into childhood. It ties back into your past, because what I was getting at before was extreme addiction. The ones that I'm talking about, the ones that we see on TV, interventions, stuff like that.
Right. And what I can tell you is that I've seen interventions with the person that I described as you.
Yeah, no. And yes, I'm not saying that this person is, I've seen the rich kids too. Sometimes they're the worst but again, the rich kid that grew up in suburbia with all the toys, what's their problem? Love. They don't get a lot of love. A lot of that times that sends back to that family. And that's why I keep saying, like, the big thing with addiction is that family plays a massive part in it. Because everybody parties when they're young, everybody parties in college, not everybody, but most people, that 18 to 21-year-old stage is when you're trying shit out. You're doing drugs, you're partying, you're having sex all the time. You're like literally you're figuring everything out. You don't even know who you are. But again, you went to college. I've been to college. A lot of those kids make it through, but it's the kids that didn't go to college and stayed back in their hometown that are doing drugs. A lot of mine. Again, I'm not saying that's everybody.
Right.
But for the most part, you are right. It is that. But that all stems back to childhood. Like, that stems back to your upbringing. Who's around you now? Is there the one that went AWOL? Yes. But I would say 7 times out of 10, more than 50%, I would say.
Where do you get his numbers from?
You didn't, I wrote the book, baby. No, I was saying, and that's what I said. Me, I did. I would say that's my number.
That person.
But I'm just saying, like, if we could go through your clients, I'm sure, and obviously we can't, but HIPAA. But I'm just saying, in general, you can, and a lot of it, I get, they would stem from deeper issues, the ones that are severely addicted. Not everybody.
Right.
Again, not
and I think, once again, I think people who have more emotional baggage and who are deeply psychologically wounded and have mental health issues in different ways, that is a condition, predisposition, I would say, to addiction for sure. But I don't say it's not everyone, or it doesn't have to be.
I'm not saying that either.
But you did say that initially.
I did. And then I said, hold on. But then after you were talking, I said, I agreed. Because I said, I agreed. But I didn't mean, when you broke it down more.
He has some issues.
Caleb, I'm sorry. Can you elaborate on the conversation? You're just going to sit there and look fat.
I can't even get in because you're chatting the ears
I'm
off.
talking back and forth.
I have something I want to talk about for a second.
Thank you. Finally.
All right, fuck up the mic there, Mike. Explain to me. So, growing up in Ireland, I had ADHD. Have ADHD, but I'm not as hyper as I used to be. Because my mother, come closer, Mike. No, but you're not in the video. Remember, there's a camera. Come around. It's okay. I don't bite. Anyways, so I've ADHD. But growing up, I was now I'm not as hyper as I used to be. Because my mother bet it out of me. But like there was in Ireland. There's no Adderall. The only thing was Ritalin, stuff like that. So, like when we were in college in Ireland, like if we were doing exams or something, you just were told to have a Red Bull. If you're doing an all-nighter or anything like that. And then I come over to college in. Well, first of all, my mother had sent me to every fucking psychologist and psychiatrist in Ireland to find out what was wrong with me, because they didn't really know what was going on because I was so fucking hyper and wired to the moon. And she wanted to find out what was going on because Ireland's so old school. If they had a hyper child, it was just fucking whatever, go out in the street and play. But I moved up with my mother when I was 7, and it was just me and my mother basically. And I was always getting in trouble in school because I was so fucking hyper. So she would put me into all these psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever, and they would just put me on Ritalin. And that used to give me headaches, and I'd be hearing voices, and I'd be depressed and not myself. So I remember, like...
You got psychotic?
Huh? I was going... Yeah, I was fucking going psychotic because I was hearing all this shit. So Mum basically fucking bet it out of me, but then it was the point where it was like, okay... If you don't want to be on this medication, you need to learn how to control yourself.
What does bat it out of you mean?
Oh, beat it out of me.
Okay. No, I was trying to make sure.
The hyperness she would beat out of me, but then when I was on the Ritalin, she would notice, Mum picked up on it. It was like, I'd be all wired to the moon, and next minute I'd be fucking depressed, and I'd hear voices in my head, and I used to be saying it to her. So she would figure it out, right? Well, if you don't want to be hearing any of these voices in your head anymore, you need to learn how to control your hyperness so you don't have to take it.
Right.
But all the doctors would just tell her, oh no, he needs to be on it, But she didn't want me on it. And I noticed it then. I was like, all right, I'm hyper now. I have all this energy then, and I'm fucking hearing these voices in my head and stuff. I learned then to control myself a lot. Obviously, I was still naturally hyper, but I learned, I was like, I'm not taking this because I know how it was going to make me act, and then I was fine. Fast forward coming to college in America, you get overloaded on every fucking class. You have exams at the end, or like you have an assignment due by the end of the week. And in Europe, it was more like, right, you have your classes and they'd say, right, the exam's due at the end of the month or the assignment, so you have time to figure it out. Where over here, it's an overload, so everyone is on this thing to me called Adderall. I didn't know what the fuck Adderall was. I was like, just pop an Adderall. I was like, what's that? And they're like, oh, if you have ADHD or it helps you focus. And I was like, what?
What's that?
What? My question to you is, is this just a big pharma thing that they're just making millions off? Because every single person I talk to that takes Adderall is like, oh no, I've been prescribed at a young age, I need to take Adderall. I'm like, you don't need to take Adderall. At adult level, normal jobs, they're like, oh no, I have to take Adderall. Like, I can't function on a daily basis. So, like, is that just what is going on with that?
Real quick, I want to elaborate because in second grade, I went to a doctor, and Ritalin. That's when you brought Ritalin. That sparked my mind. They put me in LD class before I went to this doctor. They thought I was off the walls, but then I went to the LD class, and the teacher was like, no, he's really smart, actually. So then I found that I had that. I was just very messy, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, talking all the time. The same thing you. I was just super hyper.
Mm-hmm.
And they put me on that and on Ritalin. And over the years, I mean, this started in second grade. I'd go to the nurse, take 2 pills, 15 milligrams. Then it was Strattera. Then it was Adderall. Adderall came in like a lot later. So yeah, I agree with his question. I am curious with that stigma because, I mean, I see a difference as an adult. Like, my mind, like, I channel everything in and focus like crazy and get everything in order. But if I'm not on it, my mind, there's a million things going through my head all the time. Yeah. Like, I can't keep all my stuff in order, or I'll forget or procrastinate. Adderall, and I agree with you. I think it is a mental thing, but there's definitely an effect from it.
Yeah, but like, Mum brought me to every specialist in Ireland to find out what they thought was wrong with me, because all the teachers didn't know what was going on with me, and they all told my mother there's something wrong with him, whatever. Turns out there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. I'm an intelligent child. I was an intelligent child, and when they did all the tests on me, it was fine. It was just I was hyper, but then when they put me on this shit, I'd be a totally different person. And
did you get smarter when you was on it? Like,
no, I was only on. They only put me on Adderall. Or not Adderall. Sorry, there was no Adderall. Ritalin. I didn't. I got worse in class because I would have.
My grades drastically changed. I got straight A's.
Sure, they didn't give out. There was nothing to give to me to make me perform better. What the Ritalin would do, and he'll be able to back it up. Ritalin used to make me depressed and.
So do you have ADHD or not?
Yeah, no, I do have ADHD. But they never get me out into focus where I'd be actually. But
Ritalin
is what they give.
That was.
But what are you?
It worked for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So voices. I know what he's about to say because I think I do.
Yeah, I know. So a couple of things. So recently, and I'm going through this now.
Shit, am I completely wrong?
No, it's not about being wrong. But you are.
So I'm going through this with my patients now. So in 2020, 2019, 2020, when COVID happened, there was supply chain issues with China and the world, and apparently a lot of the active ingredients or the filler ingredients or something ingredients for stimulants came through China or something, and there became an Adderall shortage and a stimulant shortage. So I had patients who've been diagnosed with ADHD who I treat. And I'm very selective about giving out stimulants because I can go into that later. But these patients were on stimulants, and 2020 there was a shortage, so there was problems. And then it got better, and then last year and this year it got worse. So I thought it was like the same supply chain thing because somebody said that there was a new outbreak of COVID in China, blah blah blah. But then I looked through the stuff, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Then there was an article by either Doximity or Medscape or the one of the medical companies came out and said that during COVID, the prescriptions of Adderall went through the roof. The diagnosis of Adderall went through the roof. And what happened was, because during COVID, the country, the federal government kind of made the guidelines to see patients a little bit easier. Telehealth became a huge thing. So then you got a lot of people just calling up or going to telehealth and seeing doctors and being like, hey, I have ADHD, I need stimulants. So the prescription of Adderall in the past 3 years has gone through the roof, so much so that the demands can't meet the supplies. And I have patients, last week I had a lady who was like, hey, can you send my prescription to Pennsylvania? I heard they got some Adderall there. and that's not legal, but because we're in Florida.
So he didn't do it. Just
Yeah, everybody, just know
not
he
do it.
did not do that.
But there's stories like that coming up, and the Adderall is overprescribed, and so the diagnosis start at the end. I think the diagnosis of ADHD is being thrown around way too much, and the U.S. school, college drug culture with ADHD and Adderall is the most insane thing I've ever seen or heard of in my life. Like it's ridiculous that these little children are doing all these drugs.
Oh,
And
unbelievable.
in medical school, I was in the Caribbean. So my med school, my first 3 years were in Grenada, and then I came to New York. And in Grenada, all of the Americans kept talking about doing Adderall and drugs, and I'm like, what is wrong with these people? Like, why is everyone doing these drugs? That was before I got into psychiatry and realized. But yeah, I think it's overprescribed. Having said that, ADHD is a very real disease.
absolutely.
And the response rate for true ADHD with medications, it's better than anything that we have. So for most people who have ADHD, we give you a stimulant, whether it's a methylphenidate salt or dextroamphetamine salt.
What about Provigil?
Provigil, yeah.
Do they still prescribe that anymore?
Some people do, I don't.
I heard that's the best. That was to me. So my friend's a doctor, and she's a dermatologist. But,
She's still a doctor.
you know what I mean? Yeah, I know she's a doctor, but I don't know if she should be like. Provigil though was
she shouldn't be prescribing that.
She's not another one. She
They can't
can't prescribe anything.
I mean, they
I was just saying,
it's not
but
their field.
in college she had talked about Provigil.
Yeah.
Provigil.
So when you look at antidepressants, the response rate is about 60%, 70%, and other psychiatric medications, it's the response rates are a little bit lower. For ADHD meds, it's 90%. That's a lot higher than most other medications. So for people who have issues with attention and concentration, it works really, really well. However, for some people, if you don't have ADHD, stimulants can be used as a performance enhancing drug.
Of course.
So it's why, like, I love sports psychiatry and things like that. Like, if you what sport would they need to focus the most?
Boxing.
That's
a big one. I was a professional boxer. That was a big one. People would fail drug tests because of Adderall, and if they couldn't, even if they could provide a prescription, it's still a performance enhancing.
It's a performance enhancing drug because it sharpens up.
That's what he used for his career. That's how
your prefrontal cortex in certain ways. So
how was your career?
I wasn't a pro.
I know. Oh, I know.
I didn't even know about fucking that.
I know.
So anyway, so yeah, I think these meds are being overprescribed. I think the college drug culture is insane. And for a lot of people, if you take these drugs and you don't really have ADHD or you take too much of it, even if you do have ADHD, you can become psychotic. A lot of people get addicted to it.
Twitchy, very, very shaky. Yeah. Like me, I take like if someone had a 15,
drugs.
if I had 15, I'll take half.
Right.
A 30, a quarter. So seven, and I'm all day, 10 hours. That's how I know I know I do have it. So I won't abuse it. And I am getting better with my memory because I'm focusing on not being scatterbrained, not procrastinating, trying to focus on the things.
And I've heard this from a lot of patients, then they don't like it, is that it turns off some spontaneity and some creativity because it kind of just makes you a one-track mind. So you kind of just focus on this mic for 10 hours and you can't think about, do I have to do something else? So a lot of patients don't like that, and I can see that. And I think kind of what Caleb said, there are ways around it. If you structure your life differently, if you know what I mean, this just sounds like a cliche because it is, but if you get a good night's sleep, build up your dopamine stores in your brain. You get proper exercise.
Eat the right food.
You eat the right food. You do tasks that helps build your cognition. You recognize that, like, listen, I am scatterbrained. I cannot sit and do something for 40 minutes. So I'm gonna do something do this for 10 minutes. Then I'll do this for another something else for 10 minutes. So you guys, I kind of learn like how am I programmed, and like what do I do, and like no, and then so there's ways around it.
Knowing how you operate,
Right, learn
learning
about yourself.
Learn yourself. That's a big thing.
And become more structured. And yes, so you don't have to take stimulants. It helps.
Structure helps. That's a good one too. Structure absolutely helps. That's helped me a lot. But I'm like you. I get bored quick. Add on that or not on that, I just get bored. I have to do a different thing, work wise, and so like I jump. And I have 3 companies that I'm doing right now. So like that's me. Like it's just I'm constantly doing multiple things.
So
but structure definitely helps.
I learned to deal with it because I didn't have Adderall or anything. And then I stopped the Ritalin. I was probably like 14, right when I was going into secondary school. And I was like to my mother, I was like, I can't go into secondary school taking this shit, and I'm depressed and hearing voices and all that crack. So I stopped, and she just Mum is very much on natural health, like natural techniques and stuff like that. And she still does that, and she does acupuncture and dry needling, and I was doing different courses to like figure out natural.
Have you done acupuncture?
Yeah, my mother has done.
Yeah, she's done too a lot.
Yeah, and she.
Does that help?
Does it help?
Yeah, I've never done it. I was just curious. I've never done it before.
It is. Well, I haven't. She hasn't done it a lot on me because I left when I came to America at 21. She was doing dry needling, which is similar. But now she just got qualified in acupuncture. So when I went home, she fucking... I hate it. I don't like it, but like, I was just home at Christmas. I woke up and she was like, oh, breakfast is ready. And I was like, yeah. And like, I was like, I don't know, whatever I said to her. She goes out of the room, comes back in, just walks straight up and just go... I was like, the fuck? And she's like, just hold still, and just stuck a load of fucking needles in my face. And I was like, and I was afraid to move, but you can move. Right. But I was just like, it's good for certain things, but I didn't get it. I wasn't doing it to actually treat anything, but I heard from others, and it with tight muscles and certain different things it can help. But she would be always like finding out techniques for me to do to stay calm and relaxed and not being fidgety. And when I was like 14, my skin broke out really bad with eczema, or eczema as you say it over here.
Eczema.
Like basically, because I'm half black, when I get my eczema breaks out, I lose the pigment in my skin.
So I had spots in my back on the show. They were real bad when I was young.
Yeah, so I used to be oh my God, I used to be. So first of all, I'm hyper. Then my skin is broke out. I'm itchy, and I'm just like this, and this is me 24/7.
I could only imagine.
Oh man, you know what I used to do? I used to have my friends scratch my back, and that would calm me down because my skin was so fucking sensitive. If you did that to my skin, it would feel so sensitive. It felt so good that my friends, I'm like this 24/7. That I would literally be like, boy, one of that. Imagine do that to me, and I would just calm down.
Imagine back then doing a Molly. Just get that sensitive, you would have been unreal.
And then you go around like, oh my God. But no, I swear to God, I would literally be that one of that. I'd be like, please scratch my back, and they would do it, and it would just relax me.
Good, yeah.
And they did it, even though it not being a homo or whatever, they would do it to fucking. It would be beneficial for them because I would relax then because I was just fucking like all the time. I used to carry a little tub of cream or moisturizer around with me everywhere I went. And I got so good at putting this shit on that you didn't even notice. I could be sitting beside you and I would have it in my hand and I'd be like, then you wouldn't have a clue.
There was the boys roasting you with jokes.
No,
is that why you had to get slick with it? When you was carrying around a bottle of lotion?
Well, I was only...
Because when I grew up, you would have got roasted.
Yeah, no, I did, but it got to the point where they knew I needed it so bad.
They felt bad.
Like, I went fucking white. My skin, like we'd have sleepovers, bro, and if I had to sleep over, anyone that hated it, because I would just be like this in my sleep, tearing my skin apart. Like I used to have to wear gloves. Didn't matter.
Damn. That bad?
I used to vacuum the bed sheets. That's how bad. And dry skin. It was horrible. It was for 7 years. From 14 to 21.
But that's funny. I'm sorry.
14 to 21, it was fucking horrendous. And like I went through college.
So then you got to America and it changed?
With the good weather, the sun. But they say every 7 years your body changes. Do you agree with that? So it broke out when I was 14. Just one fucking day, wake up, skin start getting really dry, and then just it flared out everywhere. And then when I was 21 is when I moved to America, and just when I went 21, fucking all cleared up. And I was actually paranoid that it was going to break out like last year, and it didn't. Like now it broke out a little bit here and a little bit on my neck, but not like, oh my God,
that's
man,
crazy.
It was fucking horrendous.
That sounds horrendous.
It was. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. That's how fucking bad it was. I used to cry every fucking day.
Would showers mess you up?
Showers. My dermatologist said to me, if there was no such thing as showers, I wouldn't have a job. It's one of the worst, even though you need to shower, but it's one of the worst things because you're actually washing off the good bacteria as well off your skin. But like I'd have a shower. I used to lather myself in emulsifying ointment or like Vaseline before I would get in the shower, and my showers are quick. I would step in, get wet, step out, put like special soap on me, step in, rinse it out, step back out, and I had to do it that way because it would just ruin my skin. So I mainly had baths all the time. I used to put oatmeal in the baths because it's a natural ingredient in the oatmeal that kills the itch. Man, it was...
Sounds awful.
If I had any of my friends on with us from Ireland, they could explain the fucking nightmare. I swear to God, it felt better than coming. If anyone scratched my back.
You should definitely talk to a therapist about this. You got some shit.
Don't do no drugs, buddy.
Thank God it's gone. Oh, God. It was so bad. It was. I went to every specialist and they did a biopsy on me. Right?
I could tell it traumatized.
I can hear it too in your voice.
And I was out and partying and having wild, and like I remember I've seen this girl in college, and the first time she slept over, she thought I was a crackhead. Possessed.
Crackhead.
I was asleep and I was like asleep and I was like just scraping me, and she literally was. I woke up to her just looking at me like this. And I was like, what? She goes, what the fuck? I was like, what? She's like, are you possessed? Like, I was tearing myself apart all night. And she literally was so afraid, she just sat there all night just looking at me.
Did you have your gloves on?
No. So I was ruining my skin. Like, I'm in there like,
You was ruining her night is what you was doing.
She's lying in the middle.
Skin cells were probably just flying.
Yeah. She was just like,
so terrible.
It was poor girl. I was like, I'm sorry. But no, thank God, as soon as I came to America, cleared the fuck up. That shit is... Oh, it turns out, so they did a biopsy on me. Guess what I was allergic to? The protein in grass. And I play rugby. So what I noticed, I used to wear like the long sleeve underwarmers under my jersey.
You're allergic to grass?
So the worst parts are always like the creases, and especially your neck. So when I would play rugby,
you got a lot of creases.
I noticed if I didn't have one of these on, right, and I'm hitting the ground, my skin would flare really bad here and here around my neck.
You'd be a horrible slave.
Huh?
You'd be a horrible slave.
They'd have you in the house for sure. You'd be in the house for sure.
I would have been scratch like you might get definitely be a house boy.
He's possessed. Hang him down. Get him out.
I wouldn't have made it that far. I would have been like,
Master, what you want me to do right now? I got it all.
So
oh shit.
when I play rugby and I fucking get all that shit, get all the grass on me. My neck would fucking just flare up and my skin would get stiff and it hurt. And then when I found out I was allergic to grass, the dermatologist at the time, I think he was one of the best in the country. It was like a months waiting to get appointment with him. But luckily, my best friend's mom was actually his assistant. She got us in straight away.
Nice.
He was like, lather yourself with the emulsifying ointment, then put like the underwarmers on you, and then obviously I'd have my jersey on me. So I was covered. The only part I was slightly exposed was kind of like my face and shit and my hands. And they took a beating, obviously. When you're playing rugby, the grass still hitting your face. But it was the neck and the arms the worst. And
I would have tackled you. I would have tried to stick grass down your shirt and just stuck it down.
No, you didn't know it. Like,
Yeah, I would have.
In Ireland,
covered like that.
yeah, but
like
in Ireland it's fucking freezing. Everyone wore that anyway, so you wouldn't have known.
If we like rub grass on you,
No, it doesn't. So when I came to America and then started playing rugby over here, I never wore underwarmers because it was too fucking hot. I would never flare out. It was never bad. Now,
So
but
Irish
maybe
grass.
a little bit
It's a
in
specific.
here.
It's a specific style of grass. It's not
It must
necessarily.
have been.
It's not all
Yeah,
grass.
it must have been. It must have been because it was in Ireland. But we like that once we hit 21, and that's when I came to America. Never had any of them issues. The only time I get a bit dry here, but as the weather changes, it just.
I mean, I'm sure you. I've gotten ashy. I've never had that problem. Like I've gotten itchy, ashy, but not lathered up like that. That's a first, actually.
Listen, trust me, you never
Isn't
want to.
Ireland like the greenest place on earth?
Yes, yes, yes.
I just wanted to point that
It's
out.
supposed to have lush
I lived
grass.
in a country full of fucking
And
grass.
This
and
dude
played
couldn't.
rugby.
This dude couldn't lay in
That's
it
why I was.
That sucks, bro.
without scratching his skin cells off. Jeez.
God.
Well, listen.
So hold on. Before we finish, talking about sport. What sport did you play? Tell us about your sporting career. Were you an athlete?
Athlete.
so I'm a professional lover of sports. I love all sports. But growing up, I didn't have the opportunity to play a lot of sports. My parents were kind of busy, and so your parents would take you to sports to play. So they didn't take me to anything. But funny story. So I went to my high school. So second or third day of high school, there's like a volleyball court in the middle of the school. I went to all boys school, all boys high school. So like a volleyball court.
I would hate my life. No.
I could not.
So I'm like, oh, it's probably the best thing that happened to me.
No kids, right?
What?
I said no kids in high school.
Yeah, no high school pregnancies, no. So I'm in an all boys school, and in the middle of the school is a volleyball court. I'm 12 years old. I'm like, I swear to God, I'm like, only girls play volleyball. I thought like mainly girls would play volleyball. So they're like, no, our school's pretty good. I'm like, no way. So I see these guys practicing. I'm like, that looks cool. So then they're like, oh yeah, our school team at that time was pretty good, and they'd gone like a year or two without being unbeaten in the country or something. I'm like, oh. So then fast forward a couple of years, we started playing it, and that was horrible. Terrible, absolutely horrendous. Couldn't jump at all, but I was wearing like Timberlands.
Come on, man.
He's wondering why he can't jump. He has fucking Timberlands on.
Shocker.
So they were like knockoff Timberlands. My parents would never pay that money for real Timbs. So it was like knockoff Timberlands. Anyways,
Same.
so couldn't jump at all. So changed my shoes, could jump a little bit more. So then we got invited to a club training, like a club team.
Real one, yeah.
So we go to the club team. It's a whole different level. So my club team at that time was like the starting six for the national team for the women's. It's my club team. The starting six minus like one or two guys. So is my men's club teammates. I'm like, oh, this is
There's levels of
this is a whole.
Yeah.
I felt like these guys were flying. I'm like, I can get into this. So then I got better training and I got a little bit better, but I still wasn't really good.
Men's volleyball players are some of the best athletes. They can jump out of the gym, 6'6".
I mean, they jump, but they have body control, and
It's crazy.
it's a whole different thing.
They're good athletes.
So I played volleyball. I played volleyball throughout high school. I made it I trained with our national team for a bit. I made it to one national team tour. We went to, I think it was Guyana, a couple other places that maybe could have gone, but my parents were like, they didn't support my training.
School.
Like, oh, you gotta be, So anyways, so I love volleyball and played throughout, and over the years I've actually still played volleyball. So I play quite a bit of volleyball.
So, sorry to interrupt. In Ireland, never fucking seen volleyball. Like, knew about volleyball. Never. I don't even know where there's a volleyball team in Ireland. So, me coming over to college in Arkansas, right? And we know about basketball. We play basketball in Ireland, and fucking the first day in the cafeteria, what I thought was the basketball team sitting behind me. All the girls. Tall. I've never seen girls so tall in my life. So I turn around, I'm like, hey, is there any Irish girls on the basketball team? And these girls are looking at me going, and I just see volleyball. I was like, ooh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, you call it.
That was an insult to them girls. And these girls were 6'6", 6'4".
Yeah, big.
You call volleyball girls basketball girls.
I didn't fucking know.
That's fighting.
Yeah.
That's fighting.
Everyone was just kind of like,
that's fighting.
He just said that, and like I just like, sorry.
It's like calling football players rugby players. It's an insult.
That's a compliment.
A huge insult.
Compliment.
Well, Curtis, listen.
We won't get into this.
Yeah, we're not even going to go down that path. I appreciate you coming on. We
course,
obviously
gents.
have to have you on again. It drifts. You know what I mean? We get the weird conversation, him scratching, living in a slave master's house. Could not be out in the field. Anyways, but I know I appreciate you. You definitely changed my perspective on some things, and that's hard to do. I'm very stubborn, but you spit some knowledge, and I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on here, and definitely would love to have you on here again.
Yeah, definitely to be continued because there's so much shit
There's more that I want to ask you and dive into and continue this convo, but for our first one, man, this is a success.
Yeah, thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to just, talk about myself and mental health and addiction, and hopefully some people can see this and hopefully it helps somebody out there.
Yeah, you know what, and as we get this out to everybody out there, I would love for people to reach out, contact, comment, inbox us and stuff, and just let us know what you think about these conversations.
And I definitely want to say for guys out there that are suffering with mental health issues, just talk to someone.
Absolutely, I agree.
There's no shame in it. I will say one thing with Ireland is like a lot of guys are so afraid to talk, and surprisingly, actually, one of the number one of the most people that commit suicide in Ireland is actually male travelers in the traveling community,
gypsies.
Basically to you it is, and it's crazy that like you meet a lot of the travelers in Ireland. They're usually hardy guys, and it's like you fuck with them,
they're tough. They're ready.
Their fucking whole family will kill you.
Yeah.
But they're one of the highest. They've one of the highest numbers of suicide
because you bottle up. Sometimes bottling up is a lot of the times.
Listen, men's mental health is a whole different. That's a whole conversation by itself. Men's mental health, minority men mental health.
Yeah, because they're a minority.
That's a whole different group.
World.
So there's so many groups that are untouched, untreated, and they kind of don't. Nobody asks about it. Like nobody says, well, how are the men doing? How are the minority men doing?
Women and children. Always.
Yeah, so
that's okay. It's understandable. But like Caleb said, reach out. If you have questions, ask. Talk to your people around you, and somebody should help you guide you in the right direction for sure with it. You got to come back on here though. We got a lot more to talk about.
This is why I became friends with Mike, because I know he needed some help to talk to someone. So I'm here for you, bro.
I'll just take him out and punch him back, but it's good. All right, guys, this is Having a Crack, man. Episode 4.